So this is a lamb breast or a lamb belly, and as you can see here, there are some bones in there that we need to remove. There's also quite a lot of fat. It's a very fatty piece of meat, and there's a lot of fat and skin on this side as well. So all that needs to come off. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the bones, and all I'm doing, you can see where the bone ends and the meat starts. I'm just going to pop my boning knife just around the top of those bones and just start to draw the meat away from the bones. And it's very, very similar to any other time that we're taking bone away from meat. We're just really scraping the bones, just like when we're filleting a fish or anything to do with boning at all. Just making sure that we get all the meat, or as much meat as we possibly can, away from the bone. And all I'm doing is scraping with the knife. So as you can see, I've got right to the bottom of those bones now. There's one or two little tricky ones that I've managed to get out, but they cut away quite nicely, and then we're left with a boneless piece of meat. But I'm just going to check with my fingers just to make sure that I've got everything out of there. The next part to come off is this skin and fat on this side. Okay, so I'm going to start off, and sometimes this peels away, sometimes you have to take it with a knife. It just depends how lucky you are, really. I'm going to start off just by trying to get away at this corner here, and as you can see, sometimes you can peel it away, but in this instance I think I'm going to have to get the knife on it. So what we're trying to do is lose all the skin, but try not to lose any meat, because there's very little meat on this piece anyway. So basically we're just trimming away in strips if necessary, just these pieces of skin and as much fat as we possibly can, without taking it right down to the meat underneath. Okay, so you can see that I've just started to expose the meat underneath, so I need to be really, really careful that I don't expose it all, really, because the meat does need some fat on it to cook and to get a really, really good flavour. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little bit of extra fat off there as well, because as I said, this meat is really, really fatty, and I want as little as I possibly can on there. So onto this side now, where the bones have come from. I need to get rid of as much of this membrane as I possibly can without losing too much meat. And as you can see, it's a really, really fine membrane, but we do need to get as much of it out as we can. So as I did with on the other side, just cut it off in small strips if need be, rather than trying to take the whole thing off at once. So I've taken as much fat and sinew off there as I dare. As you can see, it's a very, very thin piece of meat, and if I start to take too much more off there, I'm going to end up with absolutely nothing at all. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do with this is season it, and I'm going to use some rock salt, and I'm going to use some pepper. So quite a bit of seasoning. I want to bring as much flavour out of that as we can. So here's my kidneys. I've lifted them from the milk. They've probably been in there about 30 minutes, maybe slightly longer. Ideally they would be soaked overnight, but obviously we haven't got that luxury. And once they come out, we're just going to dice them up into smaller pieces. So, even size cubes. So I've put the kidney diced in with sausage meat. So there's probably about 50 grams of sausage meat in there. I've also got a clove of garlic that I've crushed up and some chopped rosemary. And we're just going to make the filling with this. It's up to you whether you get your hands into here or you use a spoon. Some people don't like to get their hands too messy at this point. So like I say, the choice is yours. But we're going to make sure it's mixed really, really well together so all those ingredients are combined. So next part is filling the breast. We want to spread this sausage meat out as evenly as we possibly can over this inside surface. As you can see, it can get a little bit messy, so if you want to use a spoon, you're more than welcome. Get as much as you can right across the surface so that every slice will include a decent amount of stuffing. I've already seasoned, don't forget, so I shouldn't need to put any more seasoning in there. If you remember, when you're crushing garlic, there's quite a bit of salt goes into that process as well. So we're not going to put any more seasoning in there at all. So I'm going to cut this piece of lamb into half, and we're going to roll it in 2 sections. So part of the skill of this task as well is the tying and the rolling of the lamb. So we're going to just take the one edge and we're going to roll it as tightly as we can. Now some of this filling is going to come out, but hopefully we'll be just able to pop it back in at the ends. So roll it into a nice cylinder shape to start off with. So one of the skills that we'll be looking for in this task is the tying and the rolling of the meat. And we're going to take about 4 pieces of string for each joint, and we're going to tie them into a butcher's knot. Okay, so a butcher's knot is basically a slip knot. We're going to tie it round, and the string comes under and as tight as we possibly can so that piece of meat doesn't come undone. And then any excess string we're just going to trim off. So I'm going to do this 4 times altogether so that I tie every single piece of this one piece of meat securely. So I'll do these 2 and then 1 here and 1 nearer the end as well. So there's the last knot going in. I've just trimmed them all off just to make sure it looks a little bit smarter, and then a little bit of seasoning on top, salt and black pepper, and I'm going to do exactly the same with this piece of meat here as well. Again, tie it, roll it and tie it and season it.